Hello and welcome into the 6th edition of High School Roundup for the 2015 Whitfield football season. And here on Cutv, my name is Matt Hagee. Alongside of me today is my analysts Zach Prosba and Anthony D'Agostino. Guys, last week was dubbed as Judgment Week. 3 conferences up for grabs basically, and we weren't disappointed.
No, definitely not. And, of course, I'm riding high coming in today because of the great Steelers win last night with Le'Veon Bell. I would have been very upset had they lost. But looking back at Judgment Week, as we called it, a lot of results that we didn't actually think were going to happen. A lot against the grain of our picks, which was both surprising and unsettling because we didn't pick them.
And to go off of what Zach said, I think that we said it is Judgment Week, and there was a lot of games that could have went either way. It was very close in the first half, and then one team came away with it in the second half. Or there's a few teams that came back in the second half that ended up winning the game and shocked us all.
And we'll take a look at that later. But let's say that we're both matching black polos, jeans today. So efficient. I love efficiency. So we will start in the Big Ten Conference, and we will start with our good friends from South Union Township. Laurel Highlands, they had a big game this week. It wasn't so much a rivalry game, but they hosted a team that they lost to the season before in the West Mifflin Titans. And Anthony, you will lead us off with the highlights.
Yeah, Laurel Highlands took on West Mifflin today, and it was a big matchup for Laurel Highlands. And Laurel Highlands ended up, Jimmy Pierce fumbled on the option, West Mifflin picked it up, and then West Mifflin, Carlin Garner, 29-yard run for touchdown. And Laurel Highlands, Jimmy Pierce has a big run, 19 yards, doesn't get the touchdown, doesn't reach over the pylon, but it sets up this Lucas Boyle 1-yard option and gets into the end zone. That was the first quarter, end of the first, 7-7. Then Jimmy Pierce, second quarter, 33-yard pass deep to Chad Livingston, which sets up Cameron Lightsa's 22-yard field goal. And West Mifflin answers back, Carlin Garner, 60 screen pass. That's to Dorian Foreman. He's going to run. He's going to miss a few tackles. He's now at the 50. He's got Jimmy Pierce to beat. He gets a 65-yard screen pass from Carlin Garner, which sets up this. Russell Tyree, 3-yard run up the middle, score for West Mifflin. Then Jimmy Pierce options it to Lucas Boyle. He's going to go. He has one man to beat right now. And finally gets tackled down. It's a 17-yard run. Sets up this play right here. Laurel Highlands touchdown. Jarvis Cruz powering through up the middle, 6-yard run. It's halftime, 17-14 in favor of Laurel Highlands. Then West Mifflin in the third quarter. The only score of the third quarter, Carlin Garner's 12-yard pass to Dorian Johnson, 21-17 West Mifflin. Now, fourth quarter, West Mifflin, Dorian Foreman on the end around. He has got a few men to beat. He is blazing down the field. It's a 47-yard run for West Mifflin. Then Cameron Lightsa misses a 20-yard field goal. It could have been 20-28, but misses that field goal. And if he would have made it, then this would have been the ending play. Jimmy Pierce throws to Chad Livingston, but is intercepted by Deshaun Macklin, which ends the game, ends the drive. And West Mifflin trailed 17-14 at half, guys, and then they scored 28 unanswered points this game. And then Laurel Highlands, they actually lost to Thomas Jefferson by 17. So both their losses, they lost by 17 points.
They did, and that's why I picked West Mifflin that game. That's why I said last week, because when the LH has faced good defenses, they really have not succeeded on offense, even though they got weapons with Pierce and Livingston. But that's a big loss for Laurel Highlands trying to, in playoff positioning-wise, because they still got Ringgold and Bell Vernon coming up. So it's not going to get any easier for the Mustangs, but still a great season, and West Mifflin gets a big win. And you're going to get to see West Mifflin. We'll talk about that game a little bit later, our game of the week. But then we'll take a look at the other games in the Big Ten Conference for this past week, and the big one right there. Bell Vernon over Ringgold 13-12, and then Trinity beating Uniontown 44-7. But guys, we looked at that game. It was hyped. Ringgold, Bell Vernon, and the Bell Vernon Leopards came away with the win and defended their home field.
And I'm not shocked that they won, honestly. I'm more shocked that Ringgold was held down to only 12 points. And Bell Vernon scored in like the last few seconds of the game to be able to win that one, and they blocked a Ringgold punt, I believe, too, to set that up. Bell Vernon, it's not that Ringgold lost. Bell Vernon went out and they did everything that they could to win that game. Bell Vernon right now looks like a lock to not only make it in the playoffs, maybe make a deep run, and definite Big Ten Conference champions.
Well, with that defense, for sure, and we've been saying that all season after we saw them in Week 1, this is the first time since 2000 that Bell Vernon is 6-0, so congrats to the Leopards on a big win. Now, moving along to the other games in the Big Ten Conference, no surprise there, Thomas Jefferson 50-7 over Albert Gallatin. And then here's a close game, and I actually said York was going to win this game, but EF came out with a close 36-33 win, and we're going to get to see Elizabeth Ford this week. And Anthony, that's a pretty high-scoring game.
It really was, and it didn't surprise me that York had a capability of really keeping it close to Elizabeth Ford, as we saw last week with the highlights against Laurel Highlands. They have a really good passing game and some nice trick plays, but Elizabeth Ford's Connor Hinchy rushed for 249 yards on 34 carries and scored on runs of 44 and 20 yards. So Elizabeth Ford, and they got some weapons, and it'll be interesting as they're one of our games of the week this week.
It'll be great to see Connor Hinchy and see what he can bring to the table. Here are the Big Ten standings. No one has clinched yet, surprisingly, even with Bell Vernon at 6-0. But after you got Ringgold there, then look at those 3 teams in the middle there: Laurel Highlands, TJ, and West Mifflin, all 4-2. And for the rankings for the playoffs, that could change one team. One team could get a really good team being lower, and then being higher in the standings, they could get a weak opponent. A lot of jockeying for the playoff positions.
Yeah, and it's key because in AAA, you get 5 teams per division because they take 16 teams, and then there's also 1 wild card that can come from any of the divisions. So Trinity and Elizabeth Ford are not out of this yet. And I'm thinking Trinity actually has the best shot because Elizabeth Ford, starting with West Mifflin, they got a lot of tough competition upcoming. But Trinity, they play some of the lesser teams and teams that they could beat. I think Trinity could make a run and steal a wild card spot, maybe even move up as some of the other teams start to fall, like Laurel Highlands or West Mifflin.
And Zach, you stole exactly what I was going to say because Trinity they have the best strength of schedule. EF, they're right up there with Trinity, but they play West Mifflin, and West Mifflin's got a pretty big powerhouse team, so it's going to be tough for them to come away with this win.
Well, we knew West Mifflin with the great backs they produced. Shamar Green at Slippery Rock, Jimmy Wheeler at Cal, and also D'Angelo Mitchell, who had that big game against LH the season before. So now moving on up a level to Quad A in the Foothills Conference. They had some big games this week as well. As we take a look, Altoona getting their first conference win over Latrobe 28-14, and then Plum rebounding from the loss to Kiski the week before 49-23 over Connellsville.
And that's good to see Plum rebound because we were all shocked relatively that Plum lost to Kiski the way that they did, not scoring. And they come out here, put up 7 touchdowns, and they got a huge matchup coming up against McKeesport, which both teams are 4-1, and you would think it's an even contest. Plum is still the underdog in my mind, though. They have to come out and play exactly how they did against Connellsville.
And definitely on the road as well. And now moving along in the Foothills Conference, Penn Trafford on their homecoming, 42-7 over Hempfield. And then how about this? We just talked about Kiski getting that big win over Plum, and then they lose to Norwin 40-31. Zach, you're the only one that picked Norwin that game. That made me frustrated because both picked Kiski.
Yeah, I picked Kiski. I thought they had it, and they had a 16-10 lead in the second quarter, but Norwin scored the next 30 points, including the first 27 of the second half. And Nick Amendola scored 3 second-half touchdowns for the Knights. So big game for the Knights over Kiski.
Yeah, just a lot of inconsistency out of that Kiski Cavaliers team. And then one non-conference game. This game was on Saturday. McKeesport, this was their homecoming. They normally play on Saturday. And they beat Paul Posluszny's former school, Hopewell, 49-14. Hopewell moving up from AAA to Quad A this season. McKeesport, nice tune-up game for Plum. As we take a look at the standings here, 3 teams have clinched: Penn Trafford, McKeesport, and Plum. And now you look under that, Norwin and Kiski. Suddenly, Kiski, we thought, they're getting close to a lock to get back to the playoffs, but now suddenly, after that loss, they still got to worry about Hempfield right behind them, who beat them, I believe.
And AAA and Quad A, exact same setup. I believe it holds true that 5 teams make it from each division in Quad A as well. So Kiski and Norwin are both still there. However, if Kiski is to fall or Norwin is to fall, Norwin has the advantage of having that win over Kiski. And I like Norwin. And I have to give a shout out to Cody Jeanette, our former host, because he went to Norwin. I like Norwin. I think they can move up in the standings a little bit later on.
I think, going with this Plum-McKeesport matchup that's coming up, I think that is not necessarily a big matchup because they have clinched the playoffs, but who wins that game is going to determine if anyone falls asleep because you already clinched. You feel like you don't have to play for anything anymore. So you still got to play hard and try to get to the top of the standings.
and especially Kiski would have the advantage over Plum because they beat them. There's just so many different things happening. That Foothills Conference is crazy, and it's going to come down to the last games of the season. So that will do it for Quad A and AAA. We will now take a commercial break. When we come back, we've been talking about it all week. Frazier at Beth Center, the CUTV Game of the Week, Game of the Year in the Tri-County South, and we'll take a look also at the AA and Single A scores and standings when we come back on High School Roundup.
Complete news, entertainment, and sports coverage from around the area, region, and nation is found right here on CUTV News Center every Thursday at 5 p.m. with anchors Jennifer Germano, Zach Prosba, entertainment with Mike Mays, and sports with Matt Hagee. Follow us on YouTube, CUTV News Center, and on Twitter, CUTV_PA, for your complete rebroadcast of your Vulcan sports. News Center airs every Thursday at 5 p.m. on Armstrong and Atlantic Broadband.
And welcome back to High School Roundup here on CUTV. We took a look at AAA and Quad A. Now it's time to look at Single A and AA. We will start with our game of the week. It was Frazier, Beth Center. Does anything else need to be said about that when those two teams play? We were all excited for this. We talked about it all week, all year basically. We're looking forward to this game. It's finally here, and Zach, you have the highlights for it.
Yeah, and you and I were both on the call of this game, and it's the last time we're ever going to see Frazier Beth Center play, and it definitely lives up to expectations and how big the magnitude was of this contest. As we'll go ahead and start rolling the highlights of this one. We'll get it started early on. Beth Center, a high snap. Anthony Welsh, who's the superstar for Beth Center, was punting, falls on it, but Frazier sets up a good field position, and then Chris Pierce has a 41-yard screen touchdown pass to Joshua Cox. You'll be hearing a lot about the Cox brothers during these highlights. That's just the first play. Josh Cox runs it in, 7-0 Frazier. As then we move to the second quarter. Hunter Patterson was in motion for Frazier, and it hits him, and it fumbles, and Edward Zalay recovers for Beth Center. They don't make anything out of it. Then, right before halftime, pass here for Frazier sets up what could be the best play we've ever seen. One reverse, actually a fake reverse, and then another reverse. Caleb Cox, a rocket arm down the field, wide open, gets it to Damon Lovis for the touchdown, and we all thought that could be it. Now you go to the third quarter, and the first drive of the third quarter, a wicked catch over a defender. That's Caleb Cox, who threw that touchdown before. It gets to the receiving end this time, 21-0. Anthony Welsh, a fake punt on fourth down. Last-ditch effort, he slips and falls. Really no highlights for Beth Center in this game as they are shut out. It's Frazier's fourth shutout of the season you see there, and Beth Center is their first Tri-County South loss since 2012 when they lost to Frazier at home. The winner of this matchup has come on the road the last 4 or 5 times, and Frazier looks like not only are they the Tri-County South champion, basically, they look like they could break the streak of the Tri-County South, looking like just complete fools in the playoffs over the last few years.
Well, that defense is wicked. They stacked 9 guys in the box on Anthony Welsh most of the time. Their form tackling was great. We saw some great performances on defense by Timothy Broadwater, Cameron Roebuck, and also Michael Mickey on the defensive line. That Frazier defense is legit. And that is the first time Beth Center's lost at home in the regular season, period, since 2012 as well with that Frazier game. So that's how the big game in the Tri-County South shook out. Now let's take a look at how the other games in the Tri-County South went. You can see Bentworth continuing their great season, 49-27 over Cal High School. Cal High School put up some numbers in that game. And then Carmichael's knocking out West Green here, 26-6. That game was pretty close at halftime. But Anthony, this game was between Cal and Bentworth was pretty close.
And it really was. It actually was tied, 14-14, heading into the fourth quarter. So Bentworth and then California kind of just took away with it in the middle of the fourth quarter. But good for California getting 27 points on the board in this game. The past 2 games we've seen them having low-scoring games, maybe even a 1-touchdown game where they actually lost. I believe it was 8-0 last time.
And now moving on to the other game in the Tri-County South, a pair of Greene County teams right here. Jeff Morgan eking out the win over Mapletown, 15-14. And Zach, devastating loss here for Mapletown because if Mapletown could have got right back in the thick of the playoffs with the win over Jeff Morgan.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you won't see this on our standings graphic when it comes up, but Mapletown is now eliminated because they lost this game. And Jeff Morgan is that much closer to clinching. And Jeff Morgan, they've looked a lot better than the last 2 years. I will give them that. but they have a big matchup coming with Carmichael's in a couple weeks. Carmichael's is not dead yet, and they are your most hated rival. You have to watch out if you're the Rockets.
Could be a big rivalry game, final playoff spot as well here. And then the one non-conference game. Good for Avella getting their first win of the season, 12-0 over Wilkinsburg. Wilkinsburg, a very trying week after that brawl with Monessen. But then now let's take a look at those Tri-County South Conference standings. No one has clinched yet, but you're right. Mapletown on down is done. They are eliminated. Right now, basically you think Frazier, Bentworth, and Beth Center, they're pretty much in, but it's just the matter of deciding who's going to be that 14th, Jeff Morgan or Carmichael's.
And it seems like it comes down every year. Jeff Morgan or Carmichael's, who's going to be the last one in? I'm going to give the advantage to Jeff Morgan. Last year, Jeff Morgan beat Carmichael's in their game. I think they do the exact same thing again this year, and I think JM clinches the spot.
Yeah, I think as well JM clinches the spot, but then Beth Center, Bentworth now 4-1, 5-1. Who's going to keep that second spot, or who's going to keep that third spot? Or are they going to switch?
And they play each other the last week of the season. So, if Beth Center loses that game, they're going to get a terrible seed in the playoffs, and Bentworth proving to be a good team.
Yeah, Bentworth, that defense, they only held Frazier to 7 points. Remember that. And now moving on to the other part of Single A, that is in our coverage area. The Eastern Conference, the big game right there. Clairton, 56-29 over Jeanette. And then Sarah Catholic on a last-second field goal beats Riverview 16-14. But guys, Clairton beating Jeanette, but Clairton had a heck of a time trying to knock out Jeanette.
It really did. And Jeanette actually led 19-18 at halftime. And then it was tied 26-26 late in the third quarter. And then Clairton just went crazy. They scored 30 consecutive points to coast to a 56-29 win over Jeanette.
It's now 20 straight regular season wins for Clairton dating back to 2013. Now, other part of the Eastern Conference in this game, Springdale 30-12 over Monessen, and then Greensburg Central Catholic on the road gets a 26-14 win over Leechburg. But Zach, bad week for Monessen. It was a very trying week, like we said, with Wilkinsburg. They were dealing with a lot after that brawl, and Springdale gets a big win over Monessen.
Yeah, both teams happened to fall to their respective opponents. And Springdale, I'm very impressed that they were able to win this game. Monessen is a very talented team, and Springdale is one of those ones that's kind of hanging off for a playoff spot or not. And they now have an advantage, as we'll see in the standings in a second. Monessen looks like a team that's going to start falling down.
And then we will indeed take a look at those standings right there. Basically, with that win, as long as Clairton doesn't collapse, they got the Eastern Conference wrapped up with Jeanette, Greensburg Central Catholic, and then Springdale right now with the advantage over Monessen. They are tied for fourth with that win, and then everyone else. I believe Riverview and Wilkinsburg are the only ones eliminated in this conference from playoff contention. But guys, that's going to be still fun to see with Monessen and Springdale fighting for that last spot.
And Monessen, they have a tough road ahead. I think they still have to play one or two of the top three teams in that conference after their season. Whereas Springdale, they've gotten most of those out of the way. So I think Springdale has a clear advantage based on their upcoming opponents of getting into the playoffs.
And looking at Greensburg Central Catholic, they didn't win by a big margin like I thought they would. I think they played Leechburg, if I remember correctly. Leechburg's 1-4. I think Greensburg Central Catholic, it looks like they're maybe in a tough spot with that third position, trying to vie for that second place position where Jeanette's holding that right now.
And now we took a look at the Single A conferences. Now, one last thing to go through. Interstate Conference, Wash High taking care of business over Charleroi 67-8. And how about the Derry Trojans again, getting the win 20-14 over McGuffey. Guys, this Derry Trojans team, what a story.
It's a big story. And the game was won off an interception in the end zone with 1:21 remaining, and that was Carrick Hoffman's interception. So, and also Tyler Bilega, he scored all 3 touchdowns for Derry. So if someone can shut off Tyler Bilega, Derry may be in trouble.
Oh, he's a pretty good back. We saw that when they played Charleroi. And then the other part of the Interstate Conference games here, Mount Pleasant 41-7 over Brownsville. Mount Pleasant very angry after losing to Wash High. And how about Burgettstown? That's another big story developing. 30-10 over Southmoreland this past Saturday. And Zach, this Burgettstown team, we talked about Derry being a great story. How about Burgettstown after one win last season? Playoff contenders.
Burgettstown and playoff contender. And I have to send a shout out to Southmoreland. I think it was a couple weeks ago we were all thinking Southmoreland's going to make the playoffs for the first time since '79. Doesn't look like so much anymore. Burgettstown has emerged as that fourth team in this conference. It's going to come down between them and Derry. I don't think they played each other yet.
Next week.
That's probably going to be a pick'em game. Whoever wins that game probably getting in.
You're right. And who would have thought that? Who would have thought that Burgettstown Derry could be a pick'em game to start the season? And the one non-conference game here, Waynesburg losing to Quaker Valley 28-27. They lost in the final seconds of that game. So tough, heartbreaking loss for Waynesburg here. And in the Interstate Conference standings, coming up here. One team has clinched the Interstate Conference standings. It is Wash High at first place. They there, and then also Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant getting very close to the playoff standings, but then also McGuffey. Here we go. Wash High, the only one that clinched. Charleroi is eliminated, and then Mount Pleasant, McGuffey, Burgettstown Dairy, Southmoreland. But right there, Burgettstown Dairy, Southmoreland. But it's going to be tough for Southmoreland because they lost both of those teams. They won't get the tiebreaker over that.
And McGuffey has to watch out too. McGuffey could, fall down. You do have a couple of teams that are 3-2 with you. McGuffey has to be very careful because they only take 4 in AA. If you fall down in that 5th spot, you're in deep trouble.
And if you think about this too, McGuffey, we'll see, they get Burgettstown this week. They get Dairy the week after that. McGuffey closes out the season with Wash High. You're exactly right with that.
That should be at least 3 losses then.
Yeah, that could be 3 losses, but we'll see. And that is it for all the games that happened in week 6. Moving on, and then now we will take a look after the commercial break. We got the schedules, our picks for next week, and top 3 plays. Vecchio is threatened. Could this be the week Vecchio gets knocked off? Stay tuned on High School Roundup.
Save preset 1 for Cal U's best music. More music in the car. More music in the door. More music everywhere. This is 91.9 WCAL Power 92. The home of the Vulcan Nation. Playing Cal U's best music. 91.9 WCAL. WCAL Power 92.
First published in the 1880s, the California Times is the oldest student media at California University. Circulating 3,000 issues weekly on campus and in the surrounding community, the Times' mission is to deliver fair and balanced news to the student population of California University. All students are welcome to be a part of the California Times. Our offices are located in the Natali Student Union. Keep up to date with the Times online at www.caltimes.org, Facebook, and follow us on Twitter.
Welcome back to the High School Roundup here on CTV, and we take a look at the schedules for Week 7 already in the high school football season. My goodness, we're flying along here. In the Foothills, we have Kiski at Altoona, Plum at McKeesport, the big game, Latrobe at Hempfield, Norwin at Connellsville, and then the non-conference game, Shaler, who has 2 wins this season after having a long losing streak, at Penn Trafford. Very tough task there, but you lose that game, Plum, McKeesport. I'm going to say it, show me something, Plum. It's a big show-me game, and Plum could really take advantage here and knock off McKeesport and move along in the standings. So now we take a look at the Big Ten Conference for this Week 7. Albert Gallatin at Bell Vernon, TJ at Uniontown, Trinity at York, and then Laurel Highlands at Ringgold, West Mifflin at Elizabeth Ford. Zach, what game are you looking forward to there?
Not to be biased or anything, but West Mifflin at Elizabeth Ford is our CUTV game of the week. I'm going to tell you what. I did pick West Mifflin in this game, but I really think Elizabeth Ford could challenge them. West Mifflin struggles against teams that are below them. West Mifflin eventually is going to lose one of the games, and I think Elizabeth Ford could be that opponent.
And EF is a tough place to win as well. Now moving on to the Interstate Conference schedule for Week 7. Burgettstown at McGuffey, Brownsville at Dairy. We called that game last year. Mount Pleasant at Charleroi, Southmoreland at Waynesburg, and the non-conference game Wash High against 4-2 New Brighton. And Anthony, what game are you looking forward to this?
Well, there's 2. Now that you mentioned Wash High at New Brighton, that's a big game. But Burgettstown McGuffey, that's a big game for Burgettstown and McGuffey. They're fighting for those spots as well. Burgettstown's got a good team, and they've shocked us a few times. So I think they may have a chance to come away with this win against McGuffey.
And they can throw the ball. Burgettstown can throw the ball, so that'll be interesting to see. And we get to see them in 2 weeks as well. Now moving on to Single A. We'll start with the Eastern Conference. Sarah Catholic at Clareton, Greensburg Central Catholic at Wilkinsburg, Riverview at Leechburg, Jeanette at Monessen, and then Jeff Morgan in Springdale. I'm going to take a look here. That's a good non-conference game. Jeanette at Monessen. Monessen's desperate, but they're at home, and Jeanette's going to be kind of reeling after that Clareton loss, that Clareton collapsed in that game. So Monessen could sneak up there. They had a lead on Springdale in that game. And then wrapping out the schedules here, we'll take a look at the Tri-County South for Week 7. Mapletown at Bentworth, West Green at Cal High School, Frazier at Carmichael's, Best Center at Avella, and then Jeff Morgan at Springdale. And Zach, what game are you looking forward to here?
I would go Frazier Carmichael's because that could be a letdown for Frazier. I'm going to go Mapletown at Bentworth because last year it was my gosh Mapletown. And I just thought in my head, we had to figure out one for Bentworth. Big, bad Bentworth.
Oh,
they're the new team this year, and I'm going to tell you what. I think Bentworth takes second place in the Tri-County South. I think they beat PC in a few weeks.
That's bold. That's bold. We'll see. So the Triple B, we'll take a look at the Pick'em standings here. Zach's still holding the lead. Now I've moved up to second to tie Anthony for second. I'm starting to close it on Zach, but running out of time here. So now let's take a look at the picks for this week, the games we have selected. We start Plum at McKeesport. We're all going with McKeesport except Anthony. Anthony, why'd you pick Plum?
As Matt said, it's a show me something game. I think Plum has what it takes to beat McKeesport. It's at McKeesport, so they have to go into McKeesport and show McKeesport up at their home field. I think they have the capability of doing it, but it's going to be a very close game.
It's just going to be a close game. I think Plum's going to do well in this game. I'm moving on to the next game here. We're taking a look at Laurel Highlands at Ringgold. We're all going with Ringgold here. I'm just saying Ringgold, they're angry. They're angry after losing to Bell Vernon, and Laurel Highlands defense has struggled against the run. We saw in that game they got Shakar Berry to deal with. So LH, big task in front of them. And the next pick'em game is our game of the week, West Mifflin at Elizabeth Ford. And Zach, you alluded to, you picked West Mifflin in this game. And West Mifflin, they're going to have a tough challenge.
They have to be on upset alert. And Steve Meyernick, who's a guy we followed for the last few years, it seems like he never graduates. He's that quarterback every year. Elizabeth Ford is going to give them a run. I'm going to go with West Mifflin, but I'm unsettled with that pick, I think.
Yeah, and me too. And moving along into the game, Double-A, Burgettstown, McGuffey. We're all going with McGuffey except Gary. Gary goes with Burgettstown in that game, but I think Burgettstown has a good shot as anyone. I went with McGuffey because they're at home. And the final game we picked this week in Single A was that non-conference game I was alluding to between the Eastern Conference and Tri-County South. We're all going with Springdale here. I think Springdale also, the Eastern Conference is a little bit more battle test than the Tri-County South, and the Eastern Conference has, I believe, a winning record when they face the Tri-County South this season. So now that will do it for our picks. Top 3 plays time for this past week. Anthony, start us off with play number 3.
And it's going to be the West Mifflin Laurel Highlands game. It's going to start off with number 3, West Mifflin. Dorian Foreman, end around. Look at this. Breaks a tackle there. Look at speedy legs there. Got a bunch of wheels. Misses a tackle there. Runs right into the end zone. 47-yard run for the touchdown.
And then we'll move on to number 2. This one comes from our game of the week, Frazier Beth Center. First drive of the third quarter, and Caleb Cox, after throwing a touchdown, is on the receiving end of this one, and it completely dominated Beth Center in that victory.
And the number 1 play will stay in the same game, the final play of the first half here. Look at this play here. Caleb Cox, he's a wide receiver, and he finds Damon Lowe's perfect pass, and he just slides in the end zone there. That was pretty much the ball game. That play was one of the best I've ever seen. But was it enough to take off Tim Vecchio's 4-week reign? Yes, it was. Tim Vecchio has been unseated, and can you imagine, the impact of this play right here. This basically won the game and also put Frazier in the running to win the Tri-County South Conference. So second straight year, a play from that game has won. But wait, we have an honorable mention here. We got to take a look. I don't know if everyone's been seeing this one. 6th grade. Look at this kid. Odell Beckham style with the one-handed catch. His name is Jordan Welch, a 6th grader. I'm not sure where state that's from, but that is a heck of a catch, guys.
That's an amazing catch. I mean, Odell Beckham Jr. makes it look easy. That kid's got to have some talent to do it. I was going to quickly comment on that Frazier play. It unseated Tim Vecchio because that play won a conference.
Yep.
Not because it may not be a better play. 106 yards is 106 yards. But the magnitude of what that play meant, that's why it's there.
It definitely was. And guys, we're about to wrap this up here. Final thoughts as we head into week 7. Anthony, I'll start with you.
Well, it's a big week. Week 7, we're getting towards the end where it's do or die for these teams who are on the brink of making the playoffs. And I think we're going to see a lot of teams try to fight for these playoffs, and there's going to be a lot of close games from maybe some teams that we didn't expect.
Yeah, I'm actually going to agree with him. It's do or die week for most of these teams. This week and next week are you going to make a playoff run or are you not? Are you going to watch at home and play some video games while the playoffs go on? I think these next couple weeks are really telling. Maybe some tough matchups for us to pick, but always going to be some good games going on.
Definitely will be. We're getting down to crunch time here. Last week was Judgment Week. This week is Do or Die Week. Our game of the week, make sure if you can't come out to any game to watch our game at Sunday at 8:30, Damon Madsen and Anthony will be on the call for that game, and it should be a great game going forward. Great games this week. And until next week, everyone, thank you for watching High School Roundup. See you next week.